She's conservative and I'm liberal, and yet we've been friends for almost 40 years. Everyone says you shouldn't discuss politics, religion, or money. We say that's exactly what friends should be talking about. Join us as we tackle the conversations you're having in your head but are too scared to say out loud. Hello, Jolene.
Hello, Nicole.
Before we begin this episode, we wanted to touch base on something that came up in our social media. One of our listeners sent us a clip that we will share with you. It was about reproductive rights, and we've already recorded a reproductive rights episode, but we thought this is new information that we would share this with everyone and then give our reaction before we get into the episode. So I'm going to play the clip.
We have some breaking news right now. A 30-year-old Atlanta woman is literally being used as an incubator to have a baby because of Georgia's heartbeat law. Her family has no say in the matter because of the law. She has been brain dead for several months. Adriana Smith was a registered nurse at Emory's Hospital. In February, she was 9 weeks pregnant when she had several bad headaches. After being discharged in the hospital, she was then sent back the next day, ended up with a blood clot in her brain. There was nothing doctors can do according to local KKTV reporting, and she was declared brain dead. 3 months later, she is still being held alive on a ventilator. Why? Because she was pregnant, 9 weeks at the time. And her family is now speaking out, saying that they had no choice in the matter because of Georgia's heartbeat abortion law, which prohibits abortions after 6 weeks. Her mother told KKTV, quote, "It's torture for me. I come here and I see my daughter breathing on a ventilator, but she's not there. The baby's health is uncertain, but the issue here is that the family had no say. The family couldn't do anything." Spread the word so more people hear about this story.
It's a heartbreaking story. Is she being kept alive because of Georgia's new Life Act, as it's called?
Where is it called a Life Act? Because I just heard this heartbeat
This was from
policy.
the Attorney General, Chris Carr, for Georgia.
Okay.
And his statement is, there is nothing in the Life Act that requires medical professionals to keep a woman on life support after brain death. Removing life support is not an action with the purpose to terminate a pregnancy. So the Attorney General is saying this woman is not being kept alive because of the Life Act. I am wondering if the real story here is the mother went on to say today, and this was just an interview that I saw just a couple hours ago, that I read, didn't see, that she said, the mother said, "We want the baby. That's a part of my daughter. The decision should have been left to us, not the state."
Oh.
I think the real story is here. Who's saying that she couldn't be taken off of life support? If the Attorney General, because I was reading all the articles, as we kind of, take a deep dive in this and you look at all of the articles and all that, all of the articles that I was reading was saying that the doctors were afraid to pull the plug because they could then be arrested for, violating this new law. And if the Attorney General comes out and says this has nothing to do with that law, who's propagating this information?
I don't know.
Right? I'm hoping they're not using this case as a way to make this law seem
unjust,
like it's being used for nefarious purposes. Right.
I feel like really stupid, honestly. And this is part of the problem. I saw that clip and just believed whatever random guy is saying.
Yep.
I didn't even think, honestly, to look up and see if it was valid or not. And you did.
Well, so I'll tell you, it was not easy.
Did the family want this baby? Do they not want this baby? Because the way that clip is cut, it's cut that it's painful to see my daughter alive. How did you Google it? What information did you find?
So when I Googled Georgia woman brain dead, all of these things come up. So it's all of these articles about, people are outraged that this law is being used in this way and what a horrible tragedy it is. 95% of the articles were about the outrage of this.
I'm looking at the Guardian article right now, and it's agreeing with you. It's saying, we didn't have a choice or a say about it. We want the baby. That's a part of my daughter. But the decision should have been left to us, not the state.
Yeah.
Smith is currently at 22 weeks in her pregnancy. The hospital plans to keep Smith on life support until early August, when doctors will deliver the baby through a cesarean section. The chances of there being a healthy newborn at the end of this is very, very small, says the director of maternal fetal medicine division at George Washington University. He may be blind, may not be able to walk, may not survive. Oh, it's just so heartbreaking.
It is. So, okay, so then I think the question is, and by the way, the article that I read was off of 11 Alive, Atlanta News from 11 Alive.
But I think it's actually important because the way that clip is shown, it's edited that the mother's upset to having seeing her daughter alive, but now they're actually saying that they do want the baby because it's part of the daughter. But I think the important takeaway that we're both understanding is that they wanted to make the decision, not the state.
So she also says in this article, the baby is actually doing better than the last time I met with doctors. They've named the baby. His name is Chance. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Chance's heartbeat is strong and that he's measuring slightly above average in weight for his gestational age. He has his toes, arms, limbs, everything is forming. We're just hoping he makes it. So again, my concern here is, has somebody taken this and is trying to exploit this family? You know, she didn't have a health directive. I read that in an earlier article. So is the reason that they're not able to take her off of life support, is it because she didn't have a health directive and that now there's another life involved? I mean, okay, now, I mean, maybe that's it. I don't know.
It also seems like people are using it for political purposes.
Right.
That they're
Exactly.
not caring about the actual human beings that are, yes. And
is that
I'm
what this
learning-
mother
yeah.
understands? You know,
Right.
how heartbreaking for her.
Exactly. So, yeah. So I guess there's a lot here, which takes us into our reproductive rights episode.
Can I add one other thing, though?
Sure, of course.
And as I first started looking at this story and looking into all the particulars, I did see where a doctor talked about what it is to be brain dead and what are the medical procedures that are done to keep somebody alive who has been deemed brain dead. And I feel like it's important to share this because being Catholic, if I believe that all life is sacred and that life begins at conception, and one of the other things that I think is important, in my opinion, of life, being Catholic, is that Catholics don't believe in vitro fertilization. And it really stems from the reason they don't believe in birth control, that the physical act of a man and a woman creating life, having sex and creating life, is such a sacred, should be a sacred thing. And so anything that interferes with that natural process is frowned upon in the Catholic Church. So that's why they don't believe in birth control, because you're creating a barrier into that act that creates human life. And that's why they don't believe in vitro fertilization, because you're now doing this, you're creating life outside of the womb and then implanting it. In this case, and I don't know this to be true, but in this case, all of these artificial means of keeping a woman alive for the purpose of life, I feel is counterintuitive to the Catholic Church's belief. So this doctor was talking about, it's not just a breathing tube. That's only good for 2 weeks. And then you have to put in a tracheostomy. And so now you've cut a hole and you're putting in the breathing tube in, just not via the mouth anymore. And all the antibiotics that you're given, because to prevent infections from all of this. And you're given a feeding tube, so you're inserting, again, making a puncture directly into your stomach to give you a feeding tube. And then all of the hormones then. He went into great detail of all of the things that have to be done to keep a person who is brain dead alive for whatever the purposes might be. I mean, it's truly heroic efforts. It's not a natural process. So my initial thought on this whole thing as I was reading this is not, I mean, I know this is a life. When this life was discovered at 9 weeks, that baby is not viable. And having all these heroic efforts outside of the natural process just seems really counterintuitive to the belief systems. So then you go back, okay, then how come you don't believe in abortion before the baby's viable at 24? That's the natural process. I mean, that baby is going to survive. This baby in her womb would not survive if she wasn't on these, all of these necessary medical procedures to keep her alive. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did I make that clear?
It's fascinating. It's fascinating. I absolutely understand where you are coming from, where your beliefs are, and why you believe what you believe. Absolutely.
That's all we could ask for.
Yeah. I might not
agree.
I agree. To me, it's sacred to have choice over my own body, but you made this very clear in a way that I've never understood it before. And I appreciate you clarifying that, which will be an interesting way to go into the reproductive rights conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago. So thank you, Jolene.
I just want to start by saying I'm not trying to change anyone's mind. I think just by talking about how each of us developed our opinions on this is important. And again, I know it's been talked about in so many different areas, and especially when Roe versus Wade was overturned. But overturned, I don't even like that term, and I guess we'll get into that as well.
I did some research, but I didn't do a ton because there's a fine line with all of these episodes where I want to be prepared and have facts, but I also want to be able to listen to you, Jolene, and to create room. And also, I find as liberals, we want to be right, and we tend to throw a ton of facts, and we're not very nice about it. And when you're doing that, I don't think there's any room for discussion. Sometimes it can help. Sometimes we need to fact check, and it totally, absolutely works. But sometimes it's, I think, really important, like you said, to listen to each other. We have very different experiences in this topic, and I think it's really important to respect each other always, but in this particular topic is a big one. So I was raised by a Jewish father and a Christian mother with no religious background, really. We did all the holidays and none of the teachings, really. And when my parents divorced, they wanted me to choose, and I was a very angry little 10-year-old, and I said nope. But then when I got to the University of Iowa, I was a theater major, but I ended up minoring in Western religion, and I studied an emphasis in Holocaust literature, but I ended up taking all these religion courses, and I read the Old Testament and the New Testament. I bring this up because the main takeaway that I experienced as I was reading these texts, because I'd heard people using it for all kinds of things, was that the Bible, 1 and 2, is a pretty straightforward text. And where it gets really tricky is how a person interprets it and how the person can weaponize it or use it for whichever way they want to prove it's their belief. And so I think there's a lot of things that I struggle with in this conversation with reproductive rights. But one of the things I really struggle with is when people use the scripture to justify abortion. Because from what I was learned in both texts, life begins at breath, if we're going to go down this road. And that the mother, her life is actually more important. I was reading this thing in preparation for this episode, where is this guy who he has left the church, but he was a very, very strict, raised conservative Christian. I don't even know what you would call it. Maybe evangelical. And he went through all these scriptures explaining like that. So as it turns out, in terms of health care, some kind of form of abortion has always been in like Greek and Roman times through medicinal tonics, sometimes for the care of the woman because she's not going to be able to carry to term. They said sometimes because she might have be carrying another man's baby, that there were that it's been going on since the beginning of, I guess, life or creation. It was in the 3rd century, the Assyrians, who are a sect of Israelite, they were the first known group to talk about like anti-sex laws. And that's when they brought the idea of abortion being bad. But the Bible knew of these laws and didn't put it in the Bible. So maybe I'm getting too in the weeds, but I was thinking about that. But I know you're a Catholic and I respect it and I love you for it. So I'm never going to say, believe what I believe.
Yeah. Nope. I think when you talk about abortion and birth control, it's one of those things that it's so complicated and it's not one size fits all. I don't think it's black and white. I would also say that you're right when you say that the Bible can be interpreted many different ways.
Do the Catholics work with the Old Testament? I can't remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Old and new.
Old and new. Okay.
And I mean, I would say all Christian religions are Old and New Testament. So, you know, Old Testament
the Jews are just old.
Yes, right. In the Torah. So then you've got then the New Testament with, you know, Jesus and talking about Jesus, his life. Okay, if we start with the religion part, you're right. I believe that life begins at conception. That's something that I came to realize. I didn't always believe that. I mean, I was raised Methodist, and I think my mom was probably pro-choice. And I was definitely, my roommate in college, her mother was the director of Planned Parenthood in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So, I mean, I was out there protesting and you know, in favor of abortion rights, and because I was in college. And I think most kids are probably at their most liberal. If they were raised conservative, they get to college and go, yeah, I'm going to do my own thing. And that was me.
Was it something you believed, or was it something to be a part of something?
No, I think it was what I believed. You know, you're in college and you're just like, live and let live and let's have a good time. I don't think you're worried about repercussions. You're not looking long term. As I look back on my college years, that's probably pretty accurate. My very good friend got an abortion. I was with her, took her to Planned Parenthood in Des Moines, and while she was having her abortion, and I mean, to this day, I mean, it is a really hard thing for her to grapple with. My other good friend, very first night that she and her now husband went on a date, had sex, got pregnant, had an abortion. Both of them decided, let's get an abortion. And then they end up getting married and have kids and live happily ever after. So I understand, I get it all. I'm saying for me and the way that I live my life, I believe that birth begins at conception. And so Jeff and I have practiced natural family planning since we've been married, and, you know, no birth control, and we've had 3 healthy pregnancies. I could go in really deep on the religious aspects of sex and all that, but that's for me. And it's what I'm teaching my girls. I don't feel like I need to preach that to anyone else because it's such a personal issue. I think that we have enough birth control methods now that are free. With Obamacare, birth control is free to every single woman in America. I just have a real problem with people not taking advantage of that. And again, I don't actually believe in birth control because I'm Catholic. But that's for me. But I'm saying for others that don't believe as I believe, they need to be on birth control. Now, that's an easy thing to say. And I know that, again, then we can go down this rabbit hole then of all the other things that are involved in this conversation.
Taking what's going on in Texas, where it is this, it feels like a Christian crusade, and where since Roe was overturned in Texas, there's been a 50% increase of women going into sepsis. And I was reading that if a person performs an abortion in Texas, they can get up to 99 years in prison. And we can get into the weeds of, do you believe that people that have been raped or incest? What I'm most concerned, honestly, is the health care of women. That's the wellness of women. We've had a private conversation where it's also never occurred to me that people used abortion for birth control. Abortion seems to be such an enormous decision to make, and it's hard on your body, and it can be expensive. And now there's less Planned Parenthoods. Like, I would think you would do everything in your power to, if you're with a partner or on a date, to use a condom. And use a condom or get a diaphragm or all the things that one might be able to do, not use an abortion. So I am more concerned in this conversation with the government taking away women's rights to the health of their own bodies. And of course, like everything else, it affects poor people the most. But I want control. And again, like I've said this before, I think the liberals suck at PR. I think pro-choice doesn't work. I want to have the say of what happens with my body, just like I want you to have the say of what happens with your body. I don't want the government to tell me, sorry, you're hemorrhaging. You happen to live in Texas. Peace out. You get to die. This is about the Christian right putting their stamp on it or something. Like, it seems, honestly, Jolene, it just seems darker to me. And speaking to a Catholic and a Christian, it doesn't seem Christian.
What the Christians would say to that is, you're only talking about the mother. You're not talking about the human that you're killing. When you have an abortion, what about the rights of that baby?
Okay. And on our side, we would call it a fetus, but I hear you. I'm thinking about the women that are hemorrhaging.
And you're right. And
that part is upsetting. The wellness of us as women. And this is my belief that the mom has more rights. The mom is more important. That person is alive and trying to give to another life. And clearly, this is my opinion, that if her body is rejecting that life, that life isn't viable in her life. Let's help her.
To a degree, I agree with you, right? I mean, if someone is, 3 months pregnant and is hemorrhaging and they say, we're going to have to save your life, we're going to have to take the life of the baby. I would say, in theory, you're absolutely right. Like, if that baby is not viable, then why not do the medically correct thing and, save that mother's life? I agree with you 100%. So, but then where we get into the gray area is when you talk about, protecting the life of the mother. I think there are people that will take advantage of that concept and say, well, her life is not going to be very good if she has to have this baby. And so we are protecting the life of that mother by allowing her to get an abortion. And not because she's in a medically precarious way, but that she goes, no, I can't, my job is too important, or I don't like the guy that got me pregnant, or, whatever the circumstances are. You'll have people take advantage of that and say, well, her mental health will not be good if she has this baby. So then you're taking away the spirit of that law.
What do you think about what's been going on in Texas and those women? Because they were like pregnant women trying to have a baby.
I'd have to see the stories because I'm not familiar.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing to bring up, because in liberal media, we'd hear about it all day long, every day. I can't, off the top of my head, tell you their names. I know their faces.
Yeah.
And during the Kamala campaign, it was all over. And then there were that poor girl. You must have heard of this woman, this young woman, Dylan, who was raped by her stepfather. It couldn't be more present in the campaigning and in liberal media. Every woman that died after Roe was taken off the books, in liberal media, every death has been highlighted. It is in our consciousness.
Sure. Yeah.
And so fascinating to me, and maybe to other people listening, that it isn't on the right.
It could be because then the right is wanting to switch that narrative to, we've got to help these people.
Jolene, there's nothing to see here, right? We've locked it down in Texas. We're nothing to see here, which both are manipulative.
Yeah, right. What would be the common ground that we would agree on here? Do you agree there are 7 states that allow third trimester abortions? Are you against that?
Are you sure about that?
There are 44 states that prohibit abortions in the third trimester. The states that allow abortions in the third trimester: Oregon, Colorado, Minnesota, New Mexico, Vermont, New Jersey, and D.C.
They're just like, oh, I don't want to have the baby anymore, or there's a medical reason?
There are no restrictions. That's a hard one, isn't it?
Let me just say this. I understand why it's not okay with you. I can see and I can feel why it's not okay for you. I guess where my belief is different is I don't feel like I have the right to make a decision for them. But I really understand why you don't think it's okay.
But if the baby is viable outside of the womb, let's just take, that really should be a kind of a starting point, right? If I believe that conception is the start of the life, then I don't believe it at all. But I get where people are saying, before it's actually viable, is it really a baby? I understand where people would make that argument. So let's say 22, 23, 24 weeks. Science is getting better and better every day. So, heck, it might be 22 weeks. Is that a starting point for Democrats and Republicans? Or even pro-choice, anti-choice people?
Here's the thing. I can't speak for everyone. I can speak for me, that the viability, I can work with that myself.
Yeah.
I really have a hard time with the rape and incest.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It's usually the super religious that throw the Bible at it or throw their religious beliefs at it. Well, that's real easy to do when you've not been the one that is a victim of rape or incest.
Yeah, right.
It just breaks my heart.
Well, what would prevent somebody from saying, yeah, I got raped? So then you're like, oh, okay, we take her word for it. If somebody wants to have an abortion, she goes, yep, that's a part where if you make that concession, then how do you prove it? It's so hard.
Having been a victim of rape, and the irony is it was gosh, when was it, Jolene? Like the second week of school?
Or it was at least the first month.
Yeah, it was definitely the first month. My dear friend Jolene, you were the one that I told. It was awful. And he gave me all kinds of diseases. I mean, it was a good time. And you were just so loving and supportive. And I think we've talked about this before, but I think it was like the week after Time magazine did a front page, a cover story about date rape. It was the fall of 1987, and no one had talked about it before. That was not a thing. Yeah. Rape was jumping out of the bushes. And,
by a stranger.
Right, with a stranger. And unfortunately, I've had several friends in college under certain circumstances like mine that were raped as well. And it's obviously awful. And I don't think I could have gotten through it without you.
Oh.
I feel wildly grateful that I didn't get pregnant.
Yeah.
I was on the pill because I had a boyfriend that didn't live in Iowa. Thank God I was on birth control. But let's use this story. And what if I hadn't been? What if I got pregnant? Like, all to say that I think it's a big thing to say you have been raped. Mm-hmm. I was filled with shame. I thought it was completely my fault. I didn't drink that was it. I didn't drink in college because it was, if you drink, you are out of control and then bad things happen. So I'm really grateful that I didn't get pregnant and didn't have to make that choice. 2 of my best friends went through it, and we're just 3 women in 1987.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know how you prove that. I just wish we were in a world where our word meant something, that people could respect each other's choice, that the government didn't throw down the hammer so that women were not put in a position that they have to worry about their health care and worry that they have to prove that they were raped or a victim of incest. Or I wish the world was different. You know, yep. I understand where you're coming from because you believe that life begins at conception. What it's sounding to me is that you have a healthy skepticism, and please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's right.
That you have a healthy skepticism of maybe human beings and what they say or do. Because you said like, oh, well, maybe they're using abortion as a birth control or they're using federal funds. But in terms of government control, doesn't that seem hypocritical? If you truly want a smaller government, shouldn't we just live and let live?
Leave the government out of it?
Yeah.
Except the government makes laws to protect Americans. We have speed limits so people don't drive too fast and kill other people. We've got laws against doing illicit drugs because of what you can do to harm yourself or harm others. We are a nation of laws. And if we can't protect the most vulnerable, being a baby who can't speak for themselves and can't advocate for themselves, then that is the role of the government. That is what the government should do. It should protect the most vulnerable. I've had this conversation with my very good friend whose mother has admitted to her, yeah, if abortion was legal when I was pregnant with you, I would have aborted you. And she goes, and probably your 2 brothers too. She's being completely honest because she was unmarried. It was a bad situation. And had abortion been legal, she goes, yeah, I would have had an abortion because that's what made sense for her. Now, My friend is a successful doctor and, a wonderful Christian mother and wife. Is an incredible human being. And so I look at that and I go, if this world were without her, what a shame, how horrible, because that would have been such an easy decision for her mother to make in those circumstances. So again, if my fundamental belief is that all life is a gift from God, then how do you pick and choose which life, needs to not live out its term and which life does?
But again, like when these states put these really strict laws where a woman is dying if she doesn't get medical care, meaning she needs to have a DNC, she needs to clear out these are my words, not viable fetus, so that she can be alive. What do you think about that? Like, I can't even imagine being a doctor and having the fear of, if I help this woman, I could, serve 99 years in prison, when you take the oath as a doctor to help people and you're seeing that this woman is dying. Like, what do you think about that?
There have to be laws for that.
Do you think it's extreme?
Yes. That doesn't seem right. Yeah, I agree.
It doesn't seem right. We both agreed on something.
I know.
I mean, listen, this is hard, and people are going to listen to this and probably scream at me for not asking you the things that I needed to ask you, and scream at you for whatever.
The thing that I wish that we could work on, that we would put more emphasis on, is not having this be the role of the government. I think the role of the government, yes, is to provide laws to protect its people. But when I look at the availability of birth control and the availability of, people who would love to adopt a baby, if they just had the opportunity, I look at that and think, why can't we make more resources available for those scenarios than making it so easy to have an abortion? And I think that's probably the basic tenet of the Republican view. Let's stop making abortion so easy.
But aren't people still getting the same amount of abortions?
No, it has slowly declined. And this was a Pew Research article that I looked at. It was actually done by the Guttmacher Institute, which was a super interesting article and full of facts and figures and all that. And so it's interesting how many people use it, though, for birth control. I think if we could start there, gosh,
Where are you reading that? Like, I guess I'm naive.
So this was Pew Research Center on the Pew website. Pew Research Center.
P-U-G-H?
P-E-W.
Okay.
This was for March of 2024, an article that was written March of 2024. It was interesting that 62% of American citizens believe that abortion should be legal, and 36% believe it should be illegal. But there was less than 1% who take an absolutist view, who say,
oh, that's interesting. Because it's more nuanced, right? When you get down to it, it's more nuanced.
Absolutely. That it's not. It's not an easy thing. Do you know how many abortions there were in the United States in 2021?
I have no idea.
Like, take a guess. How many abortions do you think there were?
How many people are are in our country? Like
340 million.
Okay. Because I was going to say 100,000.
Abortions? There were 625,000 abortions in 2021. And that doesn't include California, Maryland, New Hampshire, or New Jersey.
Why not?
That's because they don't provide their state data for abortions.
Okay.
And New Jersey is one that allows third trimester abortions. And California, there's probably a lot in California.
Being a Californian, I want to know, really?
I mean, let's just be honest.
Everyone's just having an abortion every day.
You know, everybody's having an abortion in California.
Okay.
I mean, that's a lot of abortions.
So what about now? Does it say
They don't
how
have.
many
That's
now?
the last time that they have data. This was a 2024 article, but they only produce that data every 3 years.
You said to me that it's been lowered.
From the 1980s and 90s. The peak of abortions, there was like 1.4 million in the 80s and 90s. Like that was, the peak year was like 1989 or something. And there were 1.4 million abortions then. Wow. So it has declined.
I tried to look up how many deaths had happened after Roe was no longer. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
And Texas doesn't keep track. Which again is that
due to abortion.
Yeah. Or due to abortion or complications, they don't have any record. Which again is that sort of like nothing to see here. Which I think is talk about a shame. I think that's a shame too. This is where it feels bigger to me about that women, our welfare, our health care is important. And women, if that matters to you, we need to rise up.
But I would also say, too, that reversal of Roe versus Wade, it didn't make abortions illegal. The reversal made it not a federal
right.
And
I understand
anymore.
that. But whenever they talk about states, it's like that happened like states' rights with slavery. It was like, it's just, to me, an excuse. And then there's these people, these young women in states that and they're poor and they can't get out, and it's just the luck of the draw. Mm-hmm. Did that make sense what I just said?
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah.
But I would also say that birth control is free.
Are you sure about that?
Birth control is completely free.
Okay,
the exam,
Jolene,
the
when
pills.
we were coming up, it was so expensive, and I was on birth control. I went to my mom at 15 years old. Conservatives, I'm sorry, I know I swear too much, and I started having sex too young, but I was 15, and I had a boyfriend, and I said to my mom, I would like to go on the birth control pill. And she was like, okay. And we went to the gynecologist, and she assumed I'd been pregnant. And I was like, no, I just want to be responsible. She goes, oh my God, I wish other girls would do that. So I went on the pill.
Oh, wait, you mean your doctor assumed you were pregnant, not your mother?
No,
I thought you meant your mother.
No, my doctor assumed
Gotcha.
the reason I was on the pill is I'd been pregnant before.
I get you.
And I was like, no. But I was 15 years old, and yes, I did have privilege. My parents paid. It was expensive to be on the pill. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until, like, Viagra came out, that immediately got covered. And women's birth control was not covered. It wasn't covered till fairly recently, if this is what you're saying.
I think with Obamacare. Yeah.
God bless you, Obama. Yeah. I feel like I need to fact check this, but if you're saying that it's free, I'm going to believe you, but maybe people don't know how to get it. Like, what's the disconnect then?
There's an argument to be made that our welfare system rewards mothers to have children, to have a lot of children. And the more children you have, the more money the government will give you in terms of food stamps and medical care. And
so we're going down that road.
Well, I don't want to go down that road, but I think that is...
Well, and all that Doge is trying to cut all of that out. But as a Christian, aren't you psyched that they're just having babies?
No.
See, then to me, that's like a double standard.
No, I want people to be responsible.
I want people to be responsible too.
Okay, so if birth control is free, I don't want you having babies just so that you can get more money and you can stay on your welfare.
That seems so extreme and crazy.
Oh, it sure does, and it sure happens. I mean,
how do you know this?
I have people.
What does that mean? You have people.
I know people who take advantage, who live that life. Yes.
You do firsthand know those people.
Yep.
Is that narrative being fed in the media that you watch too?
I don't think so. I don't think that, because that was something, actually, go back to Bill Clinton, who really tried to make the work laws, you're not eligible until for Medicare and the whole welfare system, and you've got to prove that you're looking for work, or you've got to babysit, blah, blah, blah. But our system still rewards the more kids you have, the more money you're going to get.
Well, that
period.
I know, because I didn't have any tax benefits as a single successful woman. None. And then I married Josh and I got some benefits, but I was like, that doesn't seem fair. I'm working my tail off and because I didn't have a baby.
So the spirit of the law.
But I think we need to reform that too.
Biden, I think, even upped the amount of money that you could get if you had children. The child tax credit, I think, was increased under Biden. Again, the intent of that law is to help provide child care, added expenses of being a parent, assuming that both parents are working and living paycheck to paycheck. And so then you've got people who take advantage of that situation. You're always going to have people who are trying to scam the system.
Is that like the forefront of your thinking? That people are out to scam, or there's something behind it?
No, I wouldn't say that's a majority of the people. I think the intent of the law is to help those people who need a little extra help. And I think every Republican would say, we absolutely want to give a helping hand to those people who need it, but we don't want to give a handout. And I think that's where we get into this problem, where if we don't have checks and balances in our government programs, then we get into a bad situation.
Well, that goes to another topic that we can't talk about, but checks and balances, stuff is getting so destroyed that there's going to be no more checks and balances.
No, I believe in the checks and balances system, and the system's working the way it's supposed to be.
I believe in it too, and I'm a little concerned. But we can talk about that another time, because I think it's important.
Yeah, no, I do too.
Wow, this was heavy and this was long. And I know that if you're listening, it's probably very frustrating, and I'd like to invite ourselves to be able to talk about this some more. I don't think that these topics, you don't sum it up in one fell swoop. And like you said, it's very nuanced. 1% are the extremists, and the rest of us are somewhere, right?
On the
somewhere
spectrum.
On the spectrum.
Yeah, truly.
Should we lighten the load a little and do a would you rather?
Yes. God.
Would you rather have skin that changes color based on your emotions, or tattoos all of your body depicting what you did yesterday?
Oh my gosh. I don't want tattoos, so I guess I'm going to be a chameleon.
Oh, nice.
Right?
I think you're choosing that because you don't want the story of your life to be tattooed all over your body all the time. You're like, I can't do that thing because it's going to be on my arm tomorrow.
I'd never get to put a swimsuit on. I'd have to move to Alaska and only wear turtlenecks and long jeans.
But you'd still have like stories on your forehead and stuff.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Okay. Would you rather never be able to eat...
You love these questions.
Would you rather never be able to eat solid food ever again?
Okay.
Or would you rather only eat extremely spicy food for the rest of your life?
Extremely spicy.
Do you like spicy? I like super spicy.
I do. We went to Thailand, and they were like, spicy, and they think Americans are so wimpy. And we're like, yeah. And then we come back to New York and we love Thai food. And they're like kind of spicy. We're like, no, real spicy. Yeah, I love spicy.
Do you have
like
stomach
spicy?
problems? No. Oh God, I get heartburn.
Oh, really?
And yes.
No,
Do
I
you
love
not?
it. I love it. Thai's my favorite. Vietnamese, spicy. There were a couple times in Thailand that my tongue went numb.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because it's that spicy. And you're like, whoa, that's not the most fun. But absolutely, I don't want to just have baby food. Because also, if your teeth fall out. If you don't have solid food, your teeth fall out. And I want to keep my teeth. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, you gotta chew a lot, otherwise your teeth, they start to fall out. No, thank you. I have dreams about that. I don't like that. All right,
Oh my
everybody.
gosh.
Thanks for listening.
Comment. I mean, I would love to hear
Yes.
thoughtful
Yes.
comments, not stupid comments. But
That would be
I mean,
nice. Thoughtful.
Like, where do we start? I'd like to know.
Yeah.
How do we
what can
figure
we
this
do?
out?
Totally. And I like that we're even talking that way,
Yeah.
right?
We've Got to Talk is produced across the world by the wildly talented, creative, and hilarious team at Bambi Media. Our theme song is Jump Jive Swing by Space Train Unlimited. Thank you so much for listening, and join us every week for another episode of We've Got to Talk.